Hey guys, it's your host Julian. This week I'm sitting down with Regular Show Storyboard Artist Sam Spina. I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons that help support this podcast. Bill, Brent, Brittany, Eight-Legged Bird, and Jacob. Thank you all so much for your support. It truly means a lot. If you want to become a member of our Patreon channel to help support this show and get all of these episodes early and ad-free, follow the link below and sign up today. Now, let's get to that chat with Sam. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to What's in My Head podcast. I'm your host, Julia. Today, I'm joined with Sam. Sam, man, welcome to the show.
Hey, what's up, man?
Not much, man. Ladies and gentlemen, we're continuing our regular show talk with Sam here. Sam, so let's take it way back to the season 7. Is that where you came on, season 7?
Yeah, I started late, season 7.
Oh, man, what a hell of a season to start on, and what a hell of a season to end on with season 8, man. So, like I said, let's take a step back and get in that metaphorical DeLorean time machine and go back to many years ago. What was
Yeah.
it like? How'd you get on regular show? What was that interview with JG like?
Yeah, it was pretty surreal, honestly, because I did not go to school for animation. I like didn't even know that people worked in animation until way after college. Like never even crossed my mind that I would ever
Mhm.
work in animation. Um, I started doing mini comics and zines and stuff like that after school. And that was pretty much like what I dedicated my life to, was just like making my own comics and writing my own stories and stuff. And I was working in restaurants. So like all my free time was just spent making my own comics, and I would save up money and like travel to these like small zine fest shows all over the country. And I did a show in San Francisco
Mhm.
and met a bunch of people that worked in animation and was like, oh my God, like met this dude, Stu Livingston, who's the man who worked on Futurama. And I was like, what the hell? You work on Futurama? That's crazy. And I met some people from Nickelodeon and ended up pitching some stuff to them because they were doing a shorts program. So that shorts program was actually my intro. But kind of around the same time, I got a cold email out of nowhere from JG asking me to take a storyboard test for regular show. And I was just like, is this real? Like, this seems fake, you know? But he just came across one of my mini comics at a shop in LA because I used to be really good about like mailing my stuff out everywhere. I was living in Denver at the time. So yeah, he just found my stuff, emailed me if I wanted to take a test. I was like losing my mind, like took the storyboard test, sent it back, didn't hear anything for a couple weeks, and eventually like 2 weeks later or something, I emailed like, "Hey, so like, what'd you guys think of the test or whatever?" And I got this like kind of whatever email that was like, "Yeah, look good. Like, we'll let you know if anything comes up." So I was like, "Okay." So I did not get it,
Yeah.
and I kind of just like was slightly bummed, but whatever, went on with my life. It just seemed like such a long shot anyways. And then I moved to Atlanta, still working in restaurants and doing comics and stuff. And I was at the bank depositing a bunch of tips. And I got a call from Brian Slater, the line producer, and was like, "Hey, this is Brian from Regular Show. Like, we have a spot open. You want to like start in a couple weeks?" And I was like, "Oh, dude, what?" Like, I could not believe it. It was like literally 2 years later. Um, and yeah, that was it. I like moved to LA. I think I asked for like a little more time. So it was probably, I think it was like 3 weeks or something that me and my wife moved out to LA and I started working on Dumptown. So actually, I did all of Dumptown. That's why I chose that episode. It was my first episode. And also, I did that whole board um, while I was working full time in a restaurant. I just like, I would come home and like at like 2 in the morning and work on the board. And I honestly, I knew nothing about storyboarding. Like, my partner at the time, Benton Connor, really taught me everything I know and helped me out so much. So
Well, you said his name was Brenton.
Benton Connor.
Oh, Ben Connor, man. Shout out to Benton, man. Dude, that's wild. So Denver, Atlanta, and then LA, all within
Yeah.
2 years.
Um, I lived in Atlanta for a year. I lived in Denver for 5 years. I'm all over. I grew up in Arizona. I went to school and stuff in South. Carolina, and then after school I went to Denver. So
You've seen some
yeah,
shit.
yeah, I have crazy shit, man.
Wild shit, man.
Yeah.
So that's that has to feel like you said it was is this a real type of thing when JG just emails you out of nowhere because he saw
Mhm.
your would you say it was a comic strip or
Yeah, mini comic, like little
uh, yeah,
self-published little zines and stuff.
that's it's such a big world but so small in the same
Yeah.
sense. Were you a fan of Regular Show? Did you watch it before then?
Yeah, honestly, I didn't watch a lot of cartoons. I still don't really watch that many cartoons, but Regular Show was awesome. Like
Yeah.
Regular Show and Adventure Time were like the two that I like really liked. And
Hmm.
Regular Show was always like the one that I actually liked, like
Yeah.
I just yeah, it's so great. Um yeah, totally, dude. It was wild. And yeah, I loved like going to work the next day and being like, JG Quintel emailed me. And everybody was like, who is that? But yeah.
That's pretty cool, man. Did you guys ever talk? Obviously, you guys will get to the interview, but did you guys ever
Oh yeah.
talk about him finding your little your mini comic? I mean, that's just it's so crazy that of all things, he just emails you about a. Co and I love comics too. I mean, I'll show you real quick. My room is a fucking mess though. So all of
Oh
my
damn.
all of
All those
my
long
long
boxes.
boxes and then all of the trades back there underneath my spam. I mean, I'm a huge,
Damn.
huge, huge, huge comic book. I mean, I just went yesterday. I think Saga dropped. If you're not reading Saga, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you're picking up Saga for Brian K. Vaughan. But that's neither here nor there. But I mean, I just think it's so wild that you just get out of nowhere, right? Just and now you're
Yeah,
here, man.
it's yeah, I had a friend who worked at it was the comic shop was called Meltdown Comics,
Hmm.
which isn't around anymore, sadly. But I had a friend who worked there and did a lot of the podcast stuff. And JG was doing a podcast, and I think he told him about me.
Oh,
So yeah, it wasn't just like he found my work and was just like so blown away, but I don't know. Still pretty wild.
yeah, that it is, man. So what was that initial interview like with JG?
Yeah, so after that call with Ryan Slater, it was just like a Zoom call, and
Hmm.
it was with JG and Sean, and I did the like probably the worst thing to do to JG, which is like, oh my God, you're the voice of Mordecai, like because I didn't know, so that was pretty weird hearing him talk and stuff. But yeah, I don't really remember much from the interview, honestly. I remember complimenting Sean on The Royals, which had just come out. If
Hmm.
you haven't watched The Royals, that show's awesome. Um, but yeah, I don't really. It was a short interview, I think.
Did you have to do a board test at all?
I did do a board test. The board test was kind of life-changing, honestly, and I still think
Yeah,
about it all the time. That's one of the things that I took that changed me as an artist, I feel like, and
yeah.
like a writer was the regular show storyboard test. I'm sure people have talked about it before on your podcast, but um it's a drawing section and a writing section, and the drawing section is you just like board a small part of the script, and the writing section is it starts with like a blank word balloon. It's like Mordecai
Mhm.
and Rigby walking, and they have a blank word balloon, and it's like make them say something funny. And then on the next page, it's the exact same drawing, and it says now make it funnier.
Yeah.
And doing that, I was like, oh shit, like that totally like changed my whole perspective because it's like you can always plus something, you can always
Mhm.
like make it funnier or snappier or whatever. So that's the thing that like really stands out to me as something I took from regular show. And I know you interviewed Toby, and I don't remember what mine said, but I remember going through after I got hired and going through the server and looking at everybody's test because it was on
Mhm.
there. And Toby's had like the most legendary, hilarious answer to that. I remember his was like, it's Mordecai and Rigby walking, and their word balloon says, "Party at Blood Lake." And then the make it funnier is tragedy at Blood Lake. I'm like, that's so good. It's so perfect, man. Toby's so funny.
Oh, that dude was so awesome. I loved chatting with him for 2 episodes. I want to get him back on so we can talk Jellystone because that's a show
Oh
I have
yeah.
not been able to dive deep into. And it's such a fun show. Like it definitely got it got a little friction at the beginning, because it's like, oh, it's not my Hanna-Barbera characters. This is too Family Guy-esque. I'm like, dude, shut up. This is hilarious. Fucking Yogi. I've said this so many times, so ladies and gentlemen, I apologize. Yogi Bear as a doctor, fucking brilliant. You give literally the dumbest character in the Hanna-Barbera mythos. You give him an MD. You give him a P. Come on, man. That's fucking comedic gold, right? I love Jellystone, so hopefully we
Yeah.
can do some Jellystone talk down the road. Um, but getting it back, man. So what was harder? Excuse me. What was harder? Was plussing it after coming up with something funny harder, or was the actual board, the art side harder?
I was more stressed about the writing than
Hmm.
the drawing, just because, um, is that true? I think it's been so long. I remember being way more nervous about one aspect and
Hmm.
being wrong about it and being like, no,
Yeah.
that's the hard part is the other part. So I don't know, man. Storyboarding's so hard. They're both really hard. Drawing is
How long did
probably harder for me. I don't know. Writing is a little more natural, especially in the regular show tone. Like it's just so normal.
how long did it take you to feel comfortable? Once you got
I,
hired and you got onto
I'm
the
still
show,
not
how
comfortable, bro.
no.
Never comfortable. But on regular show specifically, like I don't know, man. That whole time I was like, this could be my last day the entire time.
Really?
I was so green. I really knew nothing about Benton really carried me through a lot of those episodes, man. And I started on season 7, so people were cruising at that point, like
Mhm.
Minty and Ryan, all my regular show friends had been there for so long. Like we would take like 3-hour lunch breaks and all this stuff because they had that it all down pat, but I was
Muscle
like,
memory.
yeah, secretly like freaking that whole time I was freaking. But it's nerve-wracking.
So with that being said, you said you were so green. Obviously, you always feel like you're playing catch up. I have to imagine going through that. You watching everybody else just coast through it. And so, who were some of those characters that were very just me being the fan that I am, just looking at it and not being an artist like you guys. It looks like the designs were just like fucking perfect. And for me, right? But I got to
Mhm.
imagine you probably had a couple characters that were very difficult to draw and mess around with. Do any of those, maybe one, two, three characters possibly stick out to you?
The hardest characters to draw, I mean, Mordecai's beak is still like so hard to draw. I've
Yeah.
never drawn his beak right. Um, but they're very forgiving characters and they're so fun to draw. And the best part about the regular show character designs is they puzzle piece together so great. Like season 8, the season where they go to space, like every shot had all the characters in it in like a
Hmm.
group. Like they were just in every character in every episode, but they just like fit together so well. Like I've worked on other shows where it's like when you have a crowd shot of like all these characters and they're all kind of the same height, like there's no good way to compose anything. But yeah, the regular show characters are just so perfect. Um, I feel like the main cast, they're just all designed so great. They're
Hmm.
all so good. But some of the like whenever there was like a new character showed up, like those were the tricky ones to draw because they were usually more complicated
Hmm.
and maybe less like thoughtfully designed because they only show up for one episode. All that stuff was pretty hard. I remember I did an episode with the Format Wars, one of the last Format Wars episodes, and all those characters were like pretty hard to draw. They were like big prisms and like big robot type things. But as far as the main character goes, like I still catch myself doodling those guys. They're such a
Yeah.
joy to draw.
Oh,
Maybe
it's a
Eileen was pretty tough. She was like the hard one. She's the one I like tried to draw the best, like
mhm.
the one I tried the most on, just
Yeah.
because her hair was like she wasn't symmetrical, so that's difficult.
So I've had a couple of you guys on that went from comics to boards, and artwork with an animation. And what I find so fascinating with art in particular is perspective, right?
Mhm.
Both mentally and physically on the paper, right? So perspective was a thing that everybody that I've talked to that came from a comics background before that went into animation said they had a hard time with, just because, you've got those little boxes that you're putting everything into, but it was different than going from a 2D, especially when you have to have these characters turn within a three-dimensional world. Now, with your background and coming into animation, was there anything that like set you apart as far as being ahead from coming from comics and into animation? Does
Hmm.
that question make any sense?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And that's interesting. I could talk about this for a long time because I'm still feel like I'm learning specifically about like drawing in perspective and
Hmm.
stuff like that. Um, Man, it's like, do I go like super in the weeds here? Well, I'll start by saying I went to school for graphic design and I love graphic design and like typography and stuff like that, but I could never really like swing it as a graphic designer. Um, but when I first started Regular Show and doing storyboards, in my mind, I was like, it's just like comics, like drawing panels and
Hmm.
having the characters, and I'm writing a lot. But it took me a while to kind of really understand it really is more like design. Like there are just certain compositional rules that you don't break, or like it's almost like the same design principles mirror to storyboarding more than comics do because it's really like visual communication in a very pure form because comics are more like, it's half reading. You're writing a lot. People can spend however long on each panel so they can kind of absorb it all at whatever pace they want to. But storyboarding, you're like flashing images, 22 images a second, so
Hmm.
you really have to think about like what people are looking at, like the visual hierarchies, like where to guide their eye in more of a graphic design way than a comic book way, I feel like. The comic book element, it definitely comes in like the acting and the storytelling and all that stuff. But as far as just like pure basic drawing, when you're talking about like drawing perspective and stuff, that's all graphic design. Like where do you want the people to look and how do you want them to feel when they see certain shots, like if this character is feeling hurt, you want to like look down on them as like a simple example and stuff like that, like show like the power dynamics between shots, like if you want to have people like looming over somebody or all of that. But as far as technical drawing skills, I wish I studied photography or
Hmm.
anything having to do with film language or anything, because growing up and even now, like I have like almost zero interest in any of that stuff. And I feel like that
Yeah.
would really help me be better at drawing specifically in perspective because I think with comic books, a lot of people do everything's like a down shot. Like you see a lot of the ground plane, so you can like place stuff down so it kind of looks like a diorama almost.
Hmm.
At least, I mean, speaking for myself, as opposed to storyboarding, it's more like film language, like photography. So if you want to show like a big establishing shot, it's more of like a wide angle lens, as opposed to if you're like zooming in on somebody, it's almost like a telescopic lens. So the
Yeah.
perspective is like more straight at you, it's like less like a big plane. Can't really describe. Could show it better in like a drawing, but this is something that I literally kind of put together in the last couple of years. Because even like it's more like studying my current coworker, Andre
Hmm.
Saloff, who's a regular show guy who you should have on. He's got a million stories and it is like a total storyboarding genius. Looking at his boards, it's like I yeah, he draws in like a way that I wish I could. I'm going too much. I'll stop there, but
Oh, no, it's perfectly fine. I really enjoy that. And there was something that popped up from you explaining that. Um, so you've done 12 minutes, you've done 30 minutes, and um shit, it is escaping me. The
in the
Bat
movie.
Christmas in the movie. Yeah, I was I
Oh
could
yeah, Very Little
yeah.
Batman.
Yes, thank you. I don't know why I blanked on it. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. I got coming down with a cold or something like that. So if I sound worse than usual, I apologize. But So what's more difficult? Like I said, you've done 12, the 30s, and then the feature lengths. How hard is it to nail a 12-minute in comparison to nailing an hour 30?
Um, well, the movie was such a different experience. That's I would say out of those three, the 12-minute shows, the half hour, 22-minute shows, and the movie
Hmm.
length, I would say 22s are the hardest
Really?
because yeah, 12s, I feel like, especially if you're talking about regular show, like by the time I started, they had that formula down. And that's
Yeah.
something else I think about all the time too. Just like regular show had such a way of telling stories. Like act one is 25%, act two is 50% of the episode, act three is 25%. You always end act one with a clear statement of what the goal is this episode. And then like act two is them like trying it out a couple times and failing. And then a big oh shit moment at the end of act two. And then
Yeah.
act three is a big climax. So it's like a formula that just works. And I feel like a lot of people kind of get like caught up in trying to like reinvent the wheel too much. But this something else I've learned over the years is the simpler you can tell a story, the better, because you don't, the worst thing you could possibly do is having to like tell this super complicated plot heavy story where you're like constantly having to remind the audience what's happening and why this character is going to this place, and it's just like exposition, exposition, exposition. The best stories are like the dumbest, simplest ones, so
Hmm.
you can just like watch the characters just like have fun and like be themselves, and like you can kind of, you know what's going on, you don't have to explain it, they could just like talk. um, so I feel like that's hard to do in 22-minute shows just because it's longer. You have to tell more complicated stories. And usually you have to tell a B story, maybe a C story, maybe a D story, you know. I worked on Big City Greens also,
I
and
love that show. It is so fun.
oh cool, thanks, man. Yeah, I
Yeah.
only worked on a few episodes, but I feel like they did really great job of making 12-minute episodes and having multiple storylines and it all making sense and being like clear and easy. But yeah, regular show for the most part was just an A, maybe a B story, straightforward. But yeah, and the movie was like, I mean, it was a very unique experience for me. So uh, you're just so everybody's focused on one story, so maybe it's a lot um more manageable as compared to like a 22-minute episode because that's still like it's a lot to handle for like four storyboard artists.
Now with those three episodes that you had mentioned, some of the funniest things I've seen in a long time were going back and rewatching the episodes that I've gotten to watch. And usually I'll let the guest pick, but the one I wanted to start on was Mor-Volo the Wizard. And here's why. This had my favorite line in the entire three episodes that you did. And it was Muscle Man in the gallows or whatever those things are called. He's hanging
Yeah.
up and then he goes to say something because Pops is like tripping. He thinks he's back in medieval. He's trying to get back home. And then, he breaks character, Muscle Man breaks character, and they say, shut up, oaf. And they take a tomato and they chuck it at him in the head. And it just cuts to Pops running off. That is out of all three episodes of everything that happened, a piece of dialogue. I don't know why. It was just so fucking out of nowhere. The cut was outstanding. It was great, man. So how does this episode come to be, man? What are you most proud of when you think about this episode in particular?
That one was just a fun one because it's honestly, anytime you get to draw the characters in costumes, it's always really fun.
Yeah.
Um, I never got to do a Halloween episode, so those were always seem like super fun to get to like
Hmm.
choose the costumes. But yeah, that was a costume one. I mean, Pops is the best character, so it's awesome to have a Pops centric story like that. I remember Benton killed it with like that. There's like a crazy dragon fight at the end. I just
Yeah.
remember that board was like so crazy. Um, I don't know why I didn't come prepared. I have all the boards in my garage. Can I go grab them real quick?
Oh, absolutely.
Do
We'll
you
hit pause
mind?
and
Can
we'll
we
come
pause
back.
it for
No.
like one
Oh,
second?
absolutely.
BRB.
And we're back, and Sam brought us some goodies, man. Some boards, and boy, oh boy, do we love seeing boards on the show. So,
Yeah.
Sam, show and tell what you got.
Here's one of it's a good panel. Pop's looking at
Oh, yes, it
Hobbs as the
is.
wizard. It's so crazy seeing stuff like this now because like boards have gotten so much more complicated now that it's on the computer. Like you like everything's superposed out, and like this was like the big wide shot for the stadium.
Mhm.
So it's like pretty bare bones in a way, like Ensign as the king there.
Why was his face white in that one?
Oh, it's white out. Just like
Oh,
drawing
okay.
it and redrawing it.
Gotcha, gotcha.
But we would after we did these thumbs, we would uh scan them into or sorry, we would enlarge them and then clean them up bigger.
Hmm.
So like some of these like wide shots would get like more cleaned up. Maybe I would add more detail to the faces, but like this is how we did camera moves. Like we would just say like start here and draw a line up to like make the camera pan up.
Oh, that's so
Um,
cool.
yeah, it's like it's pretty weird looking at these again because like I said, like now it's just like so complicated with like the computer and you can do like more like insane shots and stuff. But that's like the beauty of regular show, it's just like it's simple and effective, you don't need more like gimmicks and all like the flashy stuff, it's all just post-it note drawings.
It's such like we just talked, ladies and gentlemen, and if you're watching this will be after the Matt Price episode. We'll talk about it as well. In that finale when they do that fourth wall break. I mean, Matt called it the meta, right? Because it was talking about itself essentially. But when they're starting to do that rewind essentially of like deleting the regular show universe, like Mordecai's down there looking at a storyboard, right? It's got the panel, it's got the number, and then you see all the post-it notes. And if I would have done that chat 3 years ago, like when I had Matt on the first time, there's no way in fuck, because I told you earlier, like it's like I thought one guy did everything, writing, storyboarding, all that shit. So seeing that, like, because I had said, I was like, that felt like a love letter to not only the show, but like what animation used to be. It felt like that was JG going and the board artist going like that to a time way back when, like when stuff was pencils were still hitting papers. And it
Yeah.
was one of the coolest shots. And then when I've talked to friends that watched the finale and watched the show, and then even jumped on Reddit, Reddit can be a great tool sometimes. It can be a horrible tool sometimes. You really got to pick your poison here. But I love the
Yeah.
Reddit community just because it's like you get raw, unfiltered comments and what people's real perception is or perspective is about what they watched or what they consumed. And, talking to people when that was going down, it was never mentioned. Like there were shots that were mentioned, but like that one in particular, it was the post-it notes. It was that, and then you show me this, and then Matt talks about it the day before that it was still done. Like you guys would still post-it note stuff, and I was like, that is such a fucking cool little.
Yeah.
I can't even think of the word. It was like I said, just a nod or a kiss,
It's very
chef's
tactile.
kiss type of
It's
thing.
warm, it's
Yes.
very tactile. So
Hmm.
just so nice. Like we had like drawing tables and everybody was just like drawings and just having like a stack of like discarded post-it notes. I would like collect those and I have those in like bags too. But yeah,
So one of my favorite things, because it always comes up with artists, because you guys go to war with each other about who can draw the most fucked up Sam, or if you're going against, somebody else. So who? Because I've heard about it with every artist, not so much just regular show, but like any artist I've ever had on. Who was your arch nemesis? Did you guys have one where you guys would go back and forth with characters of each other?
I wish that happened more. Honestly, I think I did a lot of caricatures of people.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think who
Who are you
gave
most proud of?
more character. There's some people who are like really kind of easy to draw.
Hmm.
Like I could draw like Calvin Wong with my eyes closed. He has like long
Hmm.
hair and glasses and like scraggly beard. Toby would be a little harder. I have a lot of good minties that I've drawn over the years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a doodler at heart
Yeah.
and always, yeah, it's fun like having like we would like for like birthdays, like draw a post-it note and stick it on their door. So everybody had a collection of post-it notes. And that's something that's kind of lost that they're trying to bring that back on my current show, Bat Family, because we were all working from home for so long. So we're back in office again. And in the beginning, we were like, yeah, we gotta like start drawing on, post-it notes and like sticking them on boards and on our doors. And I gotta say, I'm kind of the only one doing it. So
Well, at least you're
there's
keeping it alive.
I'm trying to keep it alive. Yeah. There's a lot of current caricatures by me of other people up there. So I started to draw you in my sketchbook, honestly. I'm like,
Oh,
oh my
really?
God, man. I mean, it's not finished yet. I should do another one, but oh yeah. I just started, just mindless, but
Nice.
halfway there.
Well, thanks, man. So what was oh, I remember when we were talking scenes. So what scene are you most proud of for this episode in particular?
For Mor-Volo. Dude, honestly, I'll remember that for the rest of my life. The scene where Muscle gets hit with the tomato.
Yeah.
Is that-
Shut up, Oaf.
was that recorded? Did you say that on air?
Yeah. It was he
Okay.
said, "Shut up, you oaf,"
Yeah,
and then
okay.
just smacked him with the tomato.
That's my favorite one. Before this was the shot I remembered though, was him talking to himself in the mirror and like moving in the mirror. I thought that was
Yeah.
like good staging at the time. But yeah, I think it was just like the scale because I didn't really do a lot of like actiony stuff. I'm trying to think why I chose this episode to tell you. And I think it was mostly just the costumes and it's just like a fun one.
hmm
Um, but yeah.
Now, when you guys would pick, obviously with a board-driven show, you guys are doing like a lot of the written, like obviously there was a writer's room, but you guys were writing the in-betweens and you do gags and punch up things. Um, would you guys get to, obviously you said you like the costumes. Did you guys get to pick the costumes, or would somebody say, hey, we kind of want to see these characters and these things? Or how does that whole flesh out? Do you remember
Yeah.
any
We
portion of that?
would Oh, I just had them. We would just like spend the first couple days just like drawing different costumes for the characters. These are the final ones, and you could see like I think Benton drew all of these. Whenever there was like a new character or new
Mhm.
costume idea or anything in any of the episodes, I would draw like I would fill up like sketchbook page after sketchbook page after sketchbook page of ideas.
Mhm.
And Bente would draw one, and then we would go to show JG. I'm like, how about this one or this one or this one? And he was like, oh, that's great, that's great. Let's go with Benton's. So Benton was just like hard to compete with, man. So there's like very few. Um, I think big character designs that I actually got through. And I should have chose a freaking Recap Robot episode because Recap Robot was my big win. That was my
Yeah.
kind of my one character design that like made it through and JG liked that one enough. Do you know that character, Recap Robot?
Yes.
Yes, you do. Thanks, man. Everyone's
Nah.
favorite Recap Robot.
It's just I you can see it right here. So that's I'll send a picture. So I've put every character that I've ever
Kind of
loved.
fuzzy. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I see like Mario and stuff. Oh, there's Rigby.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's Rigby and Mordecai. They're sitting on the couch playing a video game with the baby ducks. The baby ducks,
Love a
the
baby duck.
finale, and the pilot, the power. In my opinion, that's like what I set the bar at for when it comes to, like, if I needed one of those episodes that I mentioned, and I meet somebody that's never seen regular show, has no idea what it is, and I know they're going to get hooked on it, I'm going to give them one of those three episodes. I think it's like I said, they're fucking perfect from start to finish, and I've
Cool.
said this on so many occasions when it comes to the regular show. Not blowing smoke from episode 1 to episode 260, whatever it might be by the final episode count. There's not one bad episode. There's not one filler episode. There's not one episode where I go, I could have lived with that one. I fucking loved. I've laughed at every single episode. There was
Totally.
always this relatability with these characters was just phenomenal. I mean, it was just from how and Paula had mentioned like how the intro or the theme song, if you want to call it a theme song, was kind of like this monotonous, you're at work like fuck, why am I here
Yeah.
type of thing, and it sets you in the mood before you even watch anything. And I
Mhm.
never thought about that because I'm not one of those guys that will skip intros even if I've seen the intro. I'm watching One Piece, right? And I'm on episode 231 of 1112 or some shit like that,
Yeah.
with the exception of like the last story arcs intro song. I listen to it, and my oldest son, because I watch it with him, he fucking hates. He's like, can we just skip it so we can get to? I'm like, no, I want to be into this. I want to be absorbed into this world, and that's a huge part of it. And that's what
Totally.
regular show was. It'd start there, and then you'd fucking fall in love with these characters, man.
Yeah.
Um,
Did you
and I
hear
just
the
found it.
story behind the theme song?
I don't think so. I
Quote
know we had
unquote.
mentioned. I know she had mentioned it, but tell me, please.
Yeah. I just know that it's because with like TV restriction, you're just allowed a certain amount of airtime. So JG just wanted like the absolute shortest
Yeah,
intro possible so we could have more room for the episode. So
that's brilliant.
Genius. Yeah, all of his everything he does is just like, damn, why doesn't everybody do that? It's just like so like perfect. Yeah.
So, anything else stick out from this episode before we move on to the next two?
No, ready to move on.
Right on, man.
I'm
Like I
done
said,
with
beautiful.
Mor-Volo.
Beautiful episode. So which one do you want to go to now? Do you want to go to Dumptown or Snow Tubing?
Let's do Dumptown. It was my first
Oh,
episode. I have crazy stories about that one. That
oh,
one was
please.
I started, so that was like, okay, you're starting in a couple weeks. What was I doing? So I did that entire episode. I feel like that was like I did that episode freelance. That was like my tester episode to see if I got the job. So maybe I was lying when I said that other story. It's like I'm such a I'm not a liar. I like to tell myself I'm just like a storyteller. So I feel like if I tell myself something, I just like start to believe it. So I've like told this story so many times now I'm just like second guessing myself. But I very distinctly remember getting that phone call from Ryan while I was depositing checks in Atlanta. Maybe it was just to tell me about that freelance episode because my first episode of Regular Show was Dumptown, USA. I did it all in Atlanta while I still was working. But my first like week of the rotation, which is like the week that you write the episode, I was on vacation with my wife and or my then girlfriend and her parents in Hilton Head, South Carolina. And I remember the entire time I stayed huddled in our hotel room, like in a corner, because it was the only place I could get like Wi-Fi. And I was just like on Zoom with Benton, like writing the episode. Like they would be like at the beach all day, and I would just be like holed up in there, like so like I didn't want to even like consider telling them that I was like on vacation and didn't want to work because I didn't want to like risk like losing it or
Yeah.
anything. So I wrote that whole episode under like much duress with like my girlfriend being like pissed off at me, like, come outside, motherfucker. But yeah. Then we yeah, I remember coming home like super late and just like trying to draw the boards on post-it notes and being like, I don't know what I'm doing. And then going and like trying to draw it in Photoshop because I thought it might be like easier and was like, this isn't working. And just like going like full panic attacks in like the middle of the night, like by myself, just like ripping my hair out, doing this like episode. Um, so yeah, that's most of my memories from that one is just like the sheer terror and like being on vacation and like stressing about it. But yeah, now I'm wondering, did we didn't move in the middle of that episode. I think I did that entire episode there. Or yeah, I don't know. That's a crazy one. I'll have to ask my wife again, but I must have done it on post-it notes because I have them right here.
What I
But
love about that episode, and it had the most unique way on how to eat cereal. Mordecai takes the box out, he dumps milk into the box of cereal, he starts eating it, then he drops it as they start to leave, and then I can't remember the dog's name, but Rigby goes, "You gonna pick that up?" And he goes, "Nah, such and such has got it." And you see the dog, he's barely holding on because all he's eating is just shit food. His body is crushed, his stomach is all wrinkled. It was such a cool little scene, and another scene that comes to mind um, is very rarely is Rigby the voice of reason. Very rarely, right? I probably never. This is probably the only time I've ever seen him be the voice of reason. But he goes, and I loved this little gag. It was like table for one. They go to the table for one buffet or whatever it is,
dude, I was
and
just gonna bring that up, that specific drawing, because that yeah, that was a joke I was very proud of, table for one buffet. And that kind of goes back to like my South Carolina friends.
Mhm.
That's a stolen joke from one of my South Carolina friends. I don't
Yeah,
even know which one. But that fork and spoon, it's pretty generic, but there's
uh-huh.
a local South Carolina record label named Fork and Spoon Records that I drew the logo for, and
Oh, that's
that's
pretty
what it
cool.
is. So that's like a special, this is a special panel for me. That's cool that you shouted that out.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he had a plate of he had a salad. All of them
Yeah.
are eating like mac and cheese with gravy and pizza, and he's eating a salad. I'm looking at this. I'm like, when the fuck did Rigby become an adult? This was brilliant. Like I said, I loved the fucking character flips because usually Mordecai's the voice of reason to an
Yeah,
extent. You know what I mean? It takes a little bit of pulling out, but it just like just seeing a plate of salad on Rigby, like he's the adult now. When did this happen? When did he grow up? So I just thought that was like I said, and then the table for one buffet. I just fucking brilliant across the board, Sam.
thanks,
This is
bro.
for you. You know what I mean?
Thanks. I'm looking at it now and I'm seeing that we drew. It's like whenever we did pixel art, we would
Mhm.
actually like draw the jagged lines, like we didn't like make pixel art, I always thought that was kind of a funny regular show quirky thing. Because there was a bunch of other shows. I remember, I mean, not to like throw shade on Sanjay and Craig, but there was this Sanjay and Craig episode where they're like playing video games and it's like pixelated, but they just like it's just like a JPEG, like really low res or something. I'm like, that's not pixelation, but that was a funny regular show thing.
So other than that nod to the record label, man, was anything else stick out in this episode?
Um,
Other than the
hmm,
sheer panic attacks, I'm sure like I
sheer
said, you were
panic.
alluding to.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to talk about this one, just because, my first stab, really pumped on it. I I am not a movie person. I never have been. Like, I feel like I have like a suppressed traumatic event from like my childhood about movies or something, because like being in a movie theater is like one of my least favorite places to be. Like, I feel
Man,
trapped,
really?
like having to sit down in a chair for that long in the dark. Like, I truly like hate it and always have. Like, always bum my friends always wanted to have like sleepovers and watch movies, and I would make like all these excuses why I couldn't come and stuff. Like, I hate watching movies. It's
What?
weird, but I remember this one is like heavily influenced by Big Lebowski, and I'd never seen it, so I like forced myself to watch that episode to like or watch the movie to make this episode. There was a lot of like movies I forced myself to watch to do regular show episodes because it's so referential, but
I gotta ask that you gotta have at least two or three more movies that you had to make yourself watch. I would love to know.
big
Please
stick,
don't say the
big,
Goonies.
not big, big, what is it? What the hell is that movie called? Like huge action movie in the 80s. I mean, I tried to watch Aliens so many times, dude. I can't do it. I know it's like a classic. What is that
The
movie
Big Shop,
called?
Little China, or whatever it is.
Big Shop, Little China. Yes, that
Yeah.
movie. I watched that one. That was heavily referenced a bunch, like crazy fight scenes and stuff like that. It, I don't know. I can get in the whenever I do watch a movie, after it's done, I'm like, oh, that was a great movie. I'm glad I watched that. But I
Have you
don't know,
tried to do
while
it
it's
with weed?
happening,
Have you tried to smoke a joint and then watch it?
that's when I can do it. But even then, I'm just like, the last time I tried was Oppenheimer, and I was
Mhm.
just like
That's
sleeping.
a heavy movie.
Yeah.
That's a real
I
heavy movie,
I
so
like
I can
docs.
understand.
I like
Yeah.
docs. I'll watch a doc every once in a while.
I do like me some documentary. Well, I was going to ask you, man, is there anything that you do watch? But I know you said you're not a big animation guy and you're not a big movie guy. It's just like all you do is work. Do you have any, do you have any other hobbies, Sam?
I'm not a animation guy. I like the occasional animation stuff.
Yeah,
The last like animated show that I absolutely love is called 10-Year-Old Tom. Have you seen that
10-year-old
show?
Tom. No, I'm gonna write it down though.
Oh my God, dude, you're gonna love it. It's laugh out loud funny. Every episode is hysterical. Is it 10-Year-Old
What's it
Tom or
on?
10-Year-Old Tim? I think it's 10-Year-Old Tom.
What's it on?
Max. Yeah, 10-Year-Old
Thanks.
Tom, dude. You gotta watch it. It's so funny.
Yeah,
But
I'll
I'm
check it out.
actually like, I think just like the contrarian in me kind of urged this along, but I went to school in South Carolina, the University of South Carolina. It's like a huge football school, if you're
Mhm.
familiar with the Gamecocks. Um, so like football was like huge. My dad's like a huge football fan and like forced me to like play baseball my whole childhood, and I hated it, reject like typical art kid. I got into skateboarding.
Yeah.
Um, but it wasn't until after when I moved to Denver and started working in restaurants a lot and sports was like on all the time that I really kind of like started to get into it. And then I started following my college team, got really into college football for a couple seasons, then transitioned to regular football. And then when I moved out here, I kind of realized like, I was always like the thing that made me special was that I was like making comics and drawing all the
Mhm.
time and like the funny guy or whatever. But then I come out here and it's just like all my friends are the same, Suddenly, like I'm like the least talented person in the room, So I was like, God, I gotta like that's when I like really like dug my heels in and it's like, I'm a football guy now. So I'm like me and my wife just like watch sports all the time. I've been like mainlining like fantasy football news forever and like starting to do mock drafts and stuff. I'm so excited. Like preseason, the first preseason games are today. So and nowadays there's like so many like there's so there's different hard knock seasons and receiver on Netflix and all these like we love like that F1 show. Like honestly, it's like regular show is like really perfect, simple, like awesome storytelling for cartoons. But the more I've like tried to like learn about writing and being funny, it's like the thing that makes things exciting and funny and everything. Like the best part about storytelling is being surprised.
The spontaneity.
And yeah, yeah, just like anything that like catches you off guard is like, oh shit, that's like funny or scary or whatever. That's like the main element. And dude, you cannot write anything better than sports. Sports is like the ultimate perfect storytelling, and it works on like so many layers. Like there, you got like the simple part of like two teams, fighting each other, and if you're rooting for one of them, it's like good guys, bad guys. But like the more you watch sports, like I get why it's like a hobby, like you
Hmm.
start learning like individual players and like their backstories and the coaches and the players become like the commentators and the coaches and it just like compounds like
It's
you're wearing
cyclical.
a yeah, dude, you're wearing a magic hat. Like the more you like put into it, I feel like the more you get out of it. And it's just like I mean, football especially, there's only like 18 games a season. Like each game is like life or death. And like there's so many different storylines going at once. It's like, that's my favorite. And it's just like, it makes me so happy knowing that like every year for like the rest of my life, there's going to be a new season of football. And it's like only going to get better and better and better. And I have been trying to like wean myself off of it and get more into like we watch basketball too and love the NBA. But yeah, football is kind of like horrible and brutal and backed by like racist, horrible white guys and everything. But it's just so exciting. So that's what I watch tons of TV.
You were talking fantasy football. Matt had some choice words. He said he beat you the last couple years. This is your chance,
Yeah.
Sam. Look into the camera and tell Matt what's going to happen this coming season. What do you got
Oh
for him?
yeah. No chance, man. Matt's a Bears fan too, so I have no Caleb Williams is a bust. He's gonna suck. Roma Dunze is no good.
What
They
Sam is
blew
saying,
it.
Matt, is he said, suck it. He's
Yeah,
winning.
I said suck it, Matt Price. Gosh.
And
Yeah,
the
that sucked. I'm in a that my wife is also in that league,
Mhm.
and yeah, I told her like when that season started, the only person I want to beat is Matt Price, and I did not. But next year, man.
Did you guys have any like weird so like I said I'm a football adjacent. I've got it rules like you said the restaurant industry. I mean that's all anybody ever talks about. So I hear
Yeah.
a lot of this stuff second, third hand. But I heard about this group and I guess it's the norm with the most avid of these guys where they'll have like fucked up bets. Like one dude had to have a tattoo of the other dude when a
Oh my God.
Care Bear jersey of the other guy's team, I guess. I don't know. Do you
Yeah.
guys do anything like that? Do you guys have like any cool little wagers?
I want to do stuff like that. I'm into it, but I don't think anybody really takes it as seriously. Like my wife and is super into it. I'm super into it. There's a few people who are like diehards, but it's a lot of
Are
people
you
I have
saying
to
Matt's
like.
heart's not in it? Are you saying Matt's heart's not in it,
Yeah,
Sam? Is that
Matt's
what we're
half
doing
and
right now?
half, man. He's got his pinky toe dipped in, but and a lot of the other people are just like randoms who never played and barely watch football. That's that's not true either. They're just like talking shit about my whole fantasy league. But there
Oh,
were a
fuck.
bunch of people on Big City Greens that I had to like beg to join and stuff. And somebody just like auto drafted and never checked and things like that. But so I think eventually we'll whittle down the crew to the people who really, really care. And we'll get to the point where we're like, yeah, doing those embarrassing things where you have to like show up to work in like a diaper or something. I don't know.
Well, with you guys being artists, man, it would be funny and fucked up the level of
artistic freedom you guys would have on if you had to give somebody a tattoo. I can only imagine, if I had that artistic ability and that was the wager, I would make it the worst tattoo possible that they had to get. So I can only imagine what this might be. So Matt, you heard it here first, man. Don't be a coward.
That's
Put more than that pinky toe in,
it.
because Sam's coming for you this year. All right, man. So we got one more episode left, and it's
Oh,
snow
snow
tubing. This one
tubing.
was a lot of fun. I never got to snow tube, man, but did you get to do any snow tubing on the
I
spot to
have
get some
snow
experience?
tubed,
Yeah.
actually. I did snow tube. I've never done any. I lived in Denver for 5 years and I never snowboarded or skied or anything like that. I always wanted to, but it just seems so expensive. It's like I would have to like buy a lift thing for a day and like rent all the gear and like probably just like fall down a million times and not
Hmm.
even get the hang of it. So it seemed inaccessible, but I grew up skateboarding, so I always wanted to try it. But anyways, I have been snow tubing and it's pretty fun.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I just chose that episode to talk about just because you asked earlier and I kind of made a joke about it, but that's I feel like when it actually started clicking for me, like
Hmm.
I didn't feel like completely underwater, doing that episode. And I remember it was during Christmas time and I think we had a shorter schedule because like we had like a week off for Christmas, but that doesn't mean your like deadline got pushed back a week, you just like didn't have to go to work, I guess, but you were
Yeah.
still like kind of working.
You can stay in your PJs and work.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But I just remember that one being like easy breezy. Like we didn't
Mhm.
get a lot of notes. I think that was like one of like the two pitches in my life where I got no notes, just like,
Mhm.
oh, it looks good. And it's like, wow, that's incredible. Um, yeah, it was just like really solid. A pure, just like enjoyable experience. No blood, sweat, and tears really went into that one. And also, it's one of my favorite voice performances by my friend Minty, who voices
Yeah.
Eileen. She just like, I remember or whenever like the animatic came out, it was always so fun to see like, hear the animatic and hear the voices and stuff. And I just remember her like screaming her head off. I'm like, oh my God, she like really committed to like shrieking during that episode and it really paid off. So I really like that one.
That's really cool, man. And it's something I wanted to circle back to, especially with the board you had showed last time with the record label. Now, with you being into comics and being fans of comics, of course, and I told you before, backgrounds are my favorite. And it all started, let me grab it real quick. It all started me liking backgrounds in both animation and comics as well. It started with, I don't know if you've read this one before, if you're an independent guy, but you ever read this one?
No, I have
This
not, and
is
that doesn't even look familiar to me.
this is an old this is like man 15 years or so.
Hmm.
But this one I just picked it up off of a whim. I think I'd picked up the first trade, or whatever it might be. And I don't even know if you could really see it, but I'll take a picture of it and send it to you. But this guy, he's a dick. They're both cops, and he goes in there and he pisses off this dude in a 7-Eleven essentially. And the kid right here is flipping him off in the background. So you see the little 16-year-old teenager going like this to the cop. And it was like I saw that, I'm like, oh fuck, they hide stuff in the background. And I start seeing
Mm,
all these funny, fucked up signs or little notes or little nods. And what I love about that is like you guys are putting a piece of yourself.
yeah,
Obviously, this is a piece of yourself coming from, up here as these characters that are going through these fictitious, these motions, right? But what I
yeah,
love is when you see something human like that, like it's breaking the cycle. This isn't all generated, right? It's somebody put that guy there for a reason, just to have a little bit of comedic relief. Have you ever gotten to do that with any of your episodes? Obviously, they're all personal, but do you have any personal
yeah.
touches in there?
I think it's like I did that Fork and Spoon shout out in
Mhm.
that episode. I honestly, I feel like that was like this is my shot, I have to
Yeah.
like load all this stuff in. But after a while, man, like doing boards, the deadlines are insane. And it's like, oh my God, I have to do like 100 drawings before tomorrow. And I'm like freaking out. Like, you don't really have time to like really do that much, like hide a bunch of stuff like that. And even if you did, like naming a restaurant is one thing, like that's probably going to make it to the final. But if I were to like do what you're saying and like put little like hidden things that like only me and my friends would like eventually see or something like that,
Mhm.
that probably wouldn't make it like, because that's going to a background designer who
Yeah.
has to like put it actually in perspective, and then it goes to like the color person, and like there's too many steps along the way for that to like kind of get muddied down. I bet if you talk to like background designers, there's a lot they could like add more funny, quirky jokes and stuff like that too. But you saying that, it does bring up something that was a lesson that I learned of a regular show that kind of took me a while to like really sink in, but it like makes perfect sense now. Is I feel like I would always have like background characters doing shit in the background. And I think that's a comic book thing, because you want to like, you want people to like linger on your comic book
Mhm.
panels. But like I said, when stuff's like on screen, like images flashing at you, people can only look at one thing at
Yeah.
once. You know, you don't want to distract them with like little bullshitty things happening in the background. So there was a lot of like silly, you know, like visual jokey things that I would put in the background, and JG would be like, cut that, like just focus on this, or you know, and it seems like boring to just have like one person standing in like an empty field or whatever talking to the camera or whatever they're talking to. But that's like good storytelling, because you don't want people to look anywhere else, you know, you want them to like pay attention to these important story points happening. So that was a that was a lesson that I take away from regular show for sure.
So when you would board, obviously you said you learned that one a little bit later, or that lesson a little later. Did you cherish, maybe a little bit more crowd work when you got to do it in some of your panels and boards? Maybe you spent a little bit more time adding to the background when you could?
Hmm. Ah, man, cherish crowd shots. I don't think so.
No?
No, maybe no, I don't think so. There's like, yeah, there some other shows. It's like I told you, I worked on Big City Greens. I feel like those that crew has a lot of fun, like drawing each other and making like people on the team in the back and characters in the show. People didn't really do that on regular show. I think Toby and Owen did. They like hid themselves in like crowd shots and stuff. But for the most part, my crowd shots were like circle heads and like
Yeah.
limbs and things like that. I think that's why I'm I'm a board artist. You know, I kind of wish I had like the mentality of like more the design people, the character designers, the background designers who can just like laser focus in on one thing and like really flesh stuff out, make finished drawings. I was always kind of envious of that, because I could just like watch YouTube all day and like kind of vibe out and draw
Hmm.
like a background. That's just not me, man. I'm like, I'm way too like move on to the next thing, you know, like
Yeah.
draw it, move on. Like I'm not a lingerer. I'm not a perfectionist at all.
Well, that's probably a good thing to have with, especially when you guys got to do so many drawings so rapidly. Um, well, man, this has been a lot of fun. So we got a couple wrap up questions here, man.
Cool.
But this is a lot of fun. This is, ladies and gentlemen, you have no idea how long this episode has been coming. Better part of a year and a half, 2 years probably. I
Damn.
mean, just back and
Yeah, I guess
forth, just
that's
shit.
true.
Yeah, shit would always pop up. So I'm glad this finally happened because and Toby, shout out to Toby, man, for setting this one up, man. I had a blast doing this. Anytime I get to talk regular show, it's always a special episode for me. I told you the story with me and my kid and why we connected over this and why this show
It's
meant so
beautiful,
much,
man.
So forever indebted to you guys and gals that worked on this show, man. So with that being said, when you think about regular show, is there one moment, like one memory that comes to mind that whenever you hear that term regular show comes right to the forefront?
Damn, one moment.
Or
It's
what's the
like
first thing you think of?
my mind always, this is just like indicative of my personality. I just think of like the lowest lows. That's just who I am at heart. And I remember I was gonna bring this up. I wonder if it was like it was one of our earlier pitches, but pitching on regular show, especially early on, so stressful. Like I am not a verbal person, you know, like I get like tongue-tied really easy. And when we pitch, we like pin all the boards up
Hmm.
in a room, and we like physically like point at it like, okay, Rigby says this, and then Mordecai says this, and back and forth and back and forth. And some people are really, really good at pitching. My partner Benton was like super good at pitching and like did all the voices and like sound effects and would do like music cues sometimes and stuff, like expert pitcher. And I remember one of my earlier episodes, I had a scene where like all these characters were talking to each other, and I was like halfway, like not fully committed, but halfway trying to do like their voices and stuff, like, oh, like Rigby, what do you say to this? And like going like through. And I remember Benton being like, dude, don't do the voices like as I'm pitching, and just in that moment being like, oh, like, don't.
And that's your first solo pitch? That was your first solo pitch?
I don't think it was my first. I do remember in my first pitch right before, like, because we would like go around and like gather people, like be like, okay, like knock on people's doors, like, I'm about to pitch. You want to like come watch me pitch or whatever? So as they were gathering people, I was like in the room, like flop sweating, like so nervous. And JJ was like, hey, don't fuck up or something. Like he said something like he was joking, but like
Yeah.
he's not like, he's a very stoic dude. And
Well,
like,
that's a meticulous choice of words. Don't
yeah,
fuck up
yeah,
coming from your boss.
totally. And I was just like, oh, okay, dude. But yeah, I mean, I have so many. I have a million. The regular show board artists are like still like my closest friends in animation, and like they know, they're the best. So I see them all the time. It's hard to like narrow down to like one memory, but yeah, all the long lunches and yada yada yada. So
Well, with that being said, man, so you said the first thing it says, don't do those voices. Who was your best? Which character can you do the best, and which character is your worst?
um they're all the worst. But it's fun. I mean, Muscle Man is like the easy one, like, come on, bro. So that's the one you could fake it, but I'm not an actor at all.
Ah, man, you got Sam's got some competition, so watch out, Sam, for Muscle Man.
Yeah, Sam Mirren. He works
Yeah,
on
man.
Bat Family with me now. We get to work together.
Oh, that's dude, if that was like I'm one of those, I love impressions, right? And I've got a few friends that are just so gifted at doing it.
Yeah.
And one comes to mind. I was deployed as my second deployment. And for I can see his face. I just can't remember his name. But he's brand new to the Navy. And he's one of those people, like I had knew when I was in the military, I was like, fuck, I need to get out because I could do some other cool shit, right? I could do something that's a lot better. I want to be home. And I see him and I'm like, and this is not a dig towards the military because obviously I joined, right? But it was just like he could do so much better than the military. Like he has got so much talent. And he was just one of those guys that he could just hear something and mimic it. I was blown away. And
Uh-huh.
I remember he got in trouble every time you would call the line check, the guys that would land the planes and wash the planes and all them, they called them line rats. So because you're just running around like a rat the entire time. And he would answer the phone and he did every single Simpsons character. And every time it was a Simpsons character, it was a different, like whatever that person would say, right? So it wasn't just this typical you bag them, we tag them type of thing. And then once he worked through the Simpsons, it was Family Guy. When he got to Herbert the Pervert, I have never laughed that hard, like physically with somebody. Like I couldn't breathe. Somebody had to pat me on the back because it was just he hit the whistle, he hit everything, and it was the most Herbert of the pervertest lines you could possibly think of. And then you're deployed at that point. It's like 6 months in probably, so I'm dead tired. I want to get home, and it
Yeah.
was just this fucking magical moment. So if I had a friend like Sam, I'm like, Sam, do the voice, do the muscle man. Come on, come on.
I wonder
So
if he would. He's a pretty reserved dude in real life. But it's kind of crazy to think of him doing like those like pig squealy sounds that Muscle Man
yeah.
does.
I love anytime you would see Muscle Man's tits come back and hit him in the eyes. It was always
Classic.
like I'm an adult watching the show and my mom walks in and she goes, "Well, that was a thing. That was a choice."
Yeah,
And I'm like, "What?" And she was like, "Her tits." I was like, "No, it's a him." And she was like, "Well, now I've fucking seen everything."
totally.
So, all right, man. Last question. We'll end on this one because I didn't realize what time it was, and I've kept you a long time, so I apologize. But if you could summarize your entire regular show experience in one word, one sentence, one phrase, one sentence, man, what would it be? What would you classify your time on regular show as?
Growing.
Growing.
That has to be it, man. Taught me everything, changed me in a lot of ways, made me a better artist, storyteller. Yeah, that's it. Health
That's a
insurance. Didn't I just say health insurance?
that's a good thing to have, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, like I said, man, this is Sam. It's like long time coming. I'm so glad it finally did. It's been a blast, and getting to just chat and see how you approach a scene and how you came in so green. Now you still say you're green, but you looking at your artwork, man. It's like it feels like you're a 10 fucking year veteran. It feels like you've been around for quite some time. You know what I mean?
It's insane. It's yeah, 10 years. I think I started in 2014, so it's
It's
wild, dude.
blinking an eye, it happens. You know what I mean?
Seriously.
And
Yeah.
and one thing I really like I said, I wanted to circle back to this for just a second, but one thing I really loved is like you were always learning, right? Always felt like it was a new challenge to come. And most people, not most people, some people crumple under that challenge, but you kind of pushed through and you found your way through regular show, and now you're getting to work on some really, really cool stuff with some people that you've worked with before. So it's always
Thanks,
fun
bro.
getting to see where you guys come from and where you guys are growing because the growth is, growing, right? Growth is
Totally.
pretty cool, you know.
Yeah, it is.
Um, well, with that said, man, if for the fans out there listening, they want to come and say, Sam, I love those episodes you did, man. Where can they find you on social media at all?
Yep. Yeah, I'm at Spina Doodles on pretty much everything. So my last name, Spina Doodles.
Go and follow them, and all those links will be in the description below, so you can just point, click, and go tell Sam what you loved about the episodes he worked on. Well, he's been Sam. I've been Julian. It's been What's My Head podcast, and it's been another piece of your childhood. Good night.